My idea of making an impact is thinking about whether it's in my personal endeavors or my professional life goals, objectives, things like that, is how is this going to have a lasting positive impact on the people that I interact with? Even though we're an enterprise software company, our vision, so our aspirational reason for existing is to enhance the personal and professional lives and well-being of everyone we encounter. Thinking about authentically, how can I narrow my focus to activities, personal pursuits, professional endeavors that will not just drive growth, but also have a personal impact on the people that I have the blessing of interacting with in this short time we have here.
Brent, brother, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you on the Point of Impact.
Thank you, brother. Been looking forward to the conversation. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been excited about this interview for a little bit, and I've enjoyed. I read your last book, Embrace the Suck, which is hilarious, by the way.
Thank you.
Because it really embodies I don't know, it's like it's like the cynical version of Jocko's titles. You know what I'm saying? It's like my kind of sardonic humor. My first deployment to Afghanistan, our mechanic put above his shop, "Welcome to the suck." Of course, the CEO had told him to rip it down immediately, but it was funny. Anyways, you've got an interesting career path from the Navy SEALs to a few business exits, and you're doing some very interesting stuff with leadership and accelerating it with AI, which also I find humorous because you've got, I don't know, I find the humor in a whole lot of things, but as you're accelerate, it's kind of like the worst vanity plate you could imagine for somebody with a fast car. You should have braked because you got the lights on you. Anyways, why don't I let you start talking? Tell me, you didn't start off like a lot of service members knowing you were going to be in the military. It was similar to me. Until about a month before I enlisted, I absolutely knew I would never be in the military. It wasn't for me.
Right.
What was the decision-making process, and what were the events that led up to you becoming a Navy SEAL?
Sure. It's kind of an interesting story, especially upon reflection. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and ended up doing my undergrad education at SMU, Southern Methodist University. And to your point, no intention whatsoever of joining the military. And I granted this was pre 9/11, so obviously military service, had a little bit of a different, connotation that it did in the post 9/11 reality in the world you and I both lived in, for a while. So I ended up meeting and becoming very good friends with a guy named Matt at SMU, and he was one of these young men who had wanted a lifelong dream of becoming a SEAL. This was his journey, his path. He also had an affinity or passion for potentially being a pilot in the military. We'll come back to that because it does resonate with the story a little bit. And so while I thought that was admirable, I also deemed it to be a ridiculously unrealistic career path. I was a double major in finance and economics. So obviously I was going to graduate and go into finance and work for a few years, get an MBA, get a house, a wife and kids and white picket fence and all the things, living there in Dallas. And so he was a year behind me in school. So when I graduated, I took a job as a financial analyst. So I was working like 80 hours a week, but I carved out time to train with him. So for me, there was a dual purpose there. I'd been a college athlete. So like you, I want to stay fit and find, a way to integrate, fitness and wellness into my very busy schedule. So the second part of that was like, well, why not train with Matt, help a good friend prepare for this ridiculous, arduous journey that laid before him. So he and I started training every night on the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, on the nights and weekends, I'd come home from work, I'd throw on a backpack with fins and goggles. I'd run, from my apartment 4 miles to the SMU pool, We'd do about a mile swim, some calisthenics, then I'd run 4 miles home. And we did that, 4 nights a week. And then on Saturdays, we'd focus on calisthenics and distance running. Point being is we started spending so much time together, specifically focused on helping him train and prepare physically for, the SEAL entrance exam and, other facets of the early stages of training, should he be blessed enough to make it through those initial tests, that it piqued my interest. So I started reading some of the books and doing some research on the history of naval special warfare and just the U.S. Special Operations Forces in general, from World War II through Vietnam and other conflicts. And fast forward, long story short, the growing fascination and interest in the special operations community, in the military, specifically naval special warfare, coupled with my extremely tedious and boring job as a financial analyst working 80 hours a week, drove me to the culmination and the final decision to leave that career path behind, at least for the time being. And I ended up joining Matt on his journey to becoming a SEAL. So this wasn't even my ridiculous idea in the first place. By the grace of God, it ended up working out. So what we did was I quit my job, much to the extreme dismay of my parents and some friends and colleagues who were extremely skeptical about this plan, because it wasn't a good plan. Knowing the attrition rate in our special operations selection programs. And so we ended up moving up to Crested Butte, Colorado, and we trained up in Crested Butte at high altitude for another 6 months. So 7 days a week, high altitude training, about 10 to 12 hours a day, off and on, doing 3-a-day type of workouts. And then we joined the Navy, and we opted to actually enlist, like a lot of guys going through or aiming for the SEAL program do. Interesting data points, 75% of our enlisted SEALs have an undergrad degree. They opted to enlist because it can be a faster path to get to BUDS. And so you can always do the Mustang route, just like anybody can in the military, and become an officer later if that's part of your career path and professional development journey. So after all that, we had our officer packages all put together. We ended up just throwing those in the trash, basically, and going down to the Navy recruiting office downtown Dallas and signing up. And so shortly after that, we were shipped off to boot camp, and that's where the journey began. So 9/11 ended up occurring. We had just finished BUDS, which is the first 6 months of the training pipeline. There's a few days between BUDS and starting our advanced training pipeline, which is called SQT, or SEAL qualification training. And during that, those few days of leave was when 9/11 occurred, for us. And so we went into SQT, in the, near wake of 9/11, which obviously, as you know, changed the entire mindset, thinking, and culture of the United States military, specifically in special operations. And so I ended up going to SEAL Team 5. Obviously, at that point, the war in Afghanistan had kicked off. There were rumors at that point that war in Iraq was imminent. As it turns out, my task unit from SEAL Team 5 was actually the very first SEAL task unit deployed into Iraq in April of 2003 for our first combat deployment. And then after several deployments, I ended up transitioning out. There were some ended up being, blessings, but things going on in my personal life that kind of drove me towards that decision at the time. There's part of me, like all of us, I wish I'd stayed in longer, but, hindsight's 2020. And, especially with, our brothers and sisters who stay on the battlefield and they keep deploying, and you feel a sense of just being fully transparent. I'll speak for myself, feeling a sense of guilt of, stepping off the battlefield when your brothers and sisters are still, doing rotations and, still fighting the fight. But I had to prioritize certain things, my oldest son being one of them. And so ended up going back to school and then diving into entrepreneurship. So I've been a tech entrepreneur ever since, self-taught. I'm what you refer to as a non-tech founder, meaning I'm not an engineer. So there's, and it's kind of a derogatory term if you think about it, but it's coined by engineers. So, and I built a couple previous companies and currently founder of Accelerate. So that's the journey to get you up to speed. I'm married and I have 4 kids ranging from 19 all the way down to 4.
Wow. Awesome. Boredom and burnout are terrible reasons to join the SEALs. Or the military, I guess, in general.
I told you it was a stupid plan.
I'll tell you what, though, Crested Butte, that's an excellent place to train. I love that area. And I was there about a year ago. They've got a great accessibility organization out there, but uh, that's pretty funny. Like, you know, I have a friend who I rope into helping me train for ultras, and then it's like, hey, you want to go run the Daytona 100 with me? He's like, eh. I still haven't convinced anybody to. Yeah, well, I'm not trying to convince anybody to join me back in the military. I don't think they'll take me. That's pretty cool that you joined the Navy and went into the SEALs, pro buds program, almost by like induction.
Peer pressure is what I call it.
Conduction.
You're
That's
right.
That's pretty cool. It's an interesting route. Definitely where our stories diverged, because I screwed up in college, and that was like the next option was get that GI Bill to earn my way back into college. Once you got into the SEALs, was it like you'd imagined, or was the training? Was there any kind of a culture shock? Was it maybe different from your experience to maybe the others who come in? Well, you did say that many of them already have degrees.
What's one thing that I've always found fascinating about all of our special operations organizations across all branches is the culturally and the types of backgrounds people have there it's very diverse, as you know. And you look at documentaries and you watch movies and you're like, that doesn't look like a very diverse group of people. But as you know, it's wildly diverse, educationally diverse, culturally diverse of, different types of backgrounds. We've got people who show up to buds who've never even swam in the ocean. And yet they might be someone who excels at the 2-mile ocean swim that we take every week. It's a wonderful environment. I refer to it as one of the best social experiments ever designed. And it's a very level playing field. It does not matter if you're a D1 collegiate athlete or if you've never played any formal competitive sports. You have D1 athletes that quit, in the first few hours of day one. It does not matter. It is, to your point, a significant culture shock to anybody showing up there. You can watch all the documentaries and movies that you want and read all the books that you want, digest as much content or talk to mentors, but it is a different physical, cognitive, and emotional journey for every single student that shows up there. And, as you're aware, just like in a lot of our training programs in the military, it starts off as it's a very much an individual exercise to get into the program. It's very competitive to get into the program. So you enter it initially, as an individual with an individual mindset of like, I have to do this. I have to make it past these specific tests. But you quickly realize that you will go further, faster as a team. And these programs are designed that for you to fail as an individual, you will not be successful. You will not survive this training program as an individual. And some people physically do not survive, this training program. Our class leader, for example, passed away during Hell Week. It's not as common as people might think, but it's not uncommon either for people to, lose their lives during those early stages of SEAL training. But definitely a big culture shock. So there's a huge emotional factor, of stress, anxiety, the fear of failure, everything that's at stake as to why you're there in the first place. And everybody's there for a slightly different reason. It could be a personal challenge. It could be something they've wanted to do for their entire lives. It could be something that, became a more recent passion and challenge that they wanted to take on, like it was for me. But that's the beauty of it is, in a class of 200 or 250, and we run 6 classes a year, you could never handpick the 20 or 30 that will be standing tall at graduation. If you got it right on a couple, you probably got lucky. And so, and you'll see the people who do graduate, they're not like the, biggest, baddest, tough and looking dudes. Those guys often quit in the first 30 seconds. It's not the D1 athletes necessarily. It's not the most highly educated. It's usually a blend of those things. But you're talking about typically people who have a high degree of emotional intelligence. They're good leaders at every level, regardless of their rank. They are people who spend more time, talent, and energy looking out for the people to their left and right than they do themselves. Those people excel in these training programs, regardless of their physical capabilities, their athletic prowess, their education. It's people who are there for the right reasons. Those are the people that succeed. So it's a really, I feel very blessed to have had the opportunity to serve in that capacity. But going through those initial stages of training really is truly fascinating, because you see people literally physically and emotionally evolve even in those first few months. You look at people when they began and you physically look at them as an operator. They look different. They behave differently. They have a different identity, which is interesting. And I have written a lot about that and done a lot of research on that. So.
Yeah, that raises an interesting question that I'd like your take on. Is that how much of that, those qualities of a leader, the communication skills, the emotional intelligence, I think you had listed 13 of them in one of your YouTube videos a couple years ago. And how much of that is nature versus nurture? Is it innate, born with it? Some of it can be learned. Are there some people that just aren't cut out for leadership in any form?
I think that it's, as you can imagine, it's a blend of all those. Now, there are some people who just innately have certain qualities that trend more towards organically, naturally being a better leader. And it's not, good leadership, obviously, as you know, is not about, big, bold moves and the loudest voice in the room or the most charismatic person. It's the individual who can communicate clearly to a team, a vision and what we're trying to accomplish. What is the goal? Mm-hmm. What are our left and right lateral limits? What resources do we need? What threats and blockages do we need to consider? But they're also willing to get in there and do the work. They're not delegating everything to everybody. But ultimately, especially if you look at the context of the early stages of SEAL training or any type of military training, we're looking for people who are going to step up. They're going to lead regardless whether or not they're officer or enlisted. They're going to organize people. They're going to organize teams. They're going to lead from the front. They're going to lead from the rear. They just behave as a leader regardless of whatever their position or title is. And that resonates obviously in any organization. You're looking for people who behave their way into leadership roles as opposed to just waiting for that promotion based on tenure or subject matter expertise. Any organization, military or civilian, might have a lot of subject matter experts who should never be in a leadership position. You see this in, companies all the time. Will promote our best salesperson to VP of sales. Well, you just took your top sniper off the battlefield, and maybe they don't want to be a leader, and maybe they don't have the capacity or capability to be an effective leader outside of leadership development and training and things like that. But you also have to consider the contributions individuals are making to the team, the organization, and your desired outcomes as to where people need to fit. But I think, too, that leadership capability, mostly outside of some innate qualities, must be forged. It must be learned through experience, through action, through trial and error. And the best leaders, as we know, are lifelong learners. They're the individuals who are craving, not just accepting radical candor and constructive feedback. They crave it. And you think about the highest performers, you've ever worked with or known. They're not sitting around waiting for feedback from their peers or from people above them. They're asking, how can I be better? What else can I be doing to drive mission success? They're learning on their own. They're reading. They're listening to podcasts. They're watching videos. They're doing anything in their capacity to develop their own skills and their ways of thinking to, whether it's furthering their career or adding greater value to the team, which is what you're looking for. Those are the people that typically rise naturally into leadership positions.
That's kind of like what was it? Good to Great, with getting the right butts in the right seats.
Yep.
And so people have certain talents or expertise in a certain matter. Maybe they aren't, maybe it's not driving the bus, but they're just better suited for another position on the team. Maybe a lesser, but I think in every role, there's a certain aspect of leadership to it. However, when you said that, like the Navy SEALs, there's a diverse group of men. There's a diverse collection of strengths, but also a diverse collection of limiting beliefs, biases. How did the training kind of right size people's preconceptions, and how does it forge? How does the military experience and the SEAL experience? How does that forge leaders?
The well-designed training pipelines for any unit across any branch in the military, especially when you're moving towards a special operations organization, are specifically designed to create common ground and commonality behind a shared sense of purpose, a shared goal, shared mission. So, for example, let's tackle the topic of humility. That's one thing that obviously within some of these communities, you get a lot of A-type personalities, you get some ego, you get some narcissism, you get all the different types of things, but you also get a lot of people who just have a natural degree of humility. If you don't have it, it will be beaten into you, sometimes just through the training or actually beaten into you. But that's one thing that is one of the biggest competencies I think you see naturally come out of these training pipelines, but also something that is specifically looked for in students going through SEAL training in this example is a high degree of humility, because there's a lot on the line. There are pass-fail evolutions. They're looking for people who are supporting their team and putting the team's needs before their own. But also, let's say, for example, someone is just missing the mark. They're having a bad day or a bad week. They're failing timed evolutions, or they fail one of the pass-fail evolutions. If it is deemed that they get another chance, oftentimes they'll go to a board review, a performance review, basically, with the instructors. And so we're not just looking for people to be accepting of the feedback. We're looking to see what their behavior and demeanor is during that performance review. Are they humble? Are they exhibiting humility? Are they onboarding the feedback? And are they showing the fact that they will do a quick turnaround and they'll use that to level up? Or are they behaving defensively? Are they pointing fingers at other people? If that's the case, they're gone immediately. Or they're branded as that type of person and they won't last very long beyond that point. So those are the types of things that you see. These behaviors evolve over time based on the high pressure situations and the training. Again, it's not just about physicality. It's about forging a new identity, a new mindset, a new way of thinking and behaving that is, one team, one fight, one mission type of mentality. Doesn't matter what type of initial intent or purpose you came into that training with. A lot of people come in with, a chip on their shoulder, or it's a personal goal or accomplishment, or they think it looks cool on TV and the movies. You get a little bit, I think, less of that these days because there's so much opportunity to find mentors and formal training programs and pre-buds programs that people come in. We've seen students coming in more fit than we've ever seen, highly educated, very competitive. But at the end of the day, of all the slight modifications we've made to this training pipeline, and other branches have done the same in their special operations training pipelines, we still graduate roughly the same percent every single class. So we can do better talent acquisition strategies, better marketing, better branding, to get better, higher quality candidates, for example, lining up outside the door, but we still graduate roughly the same percent every single class. But you do see students coming in, more fit, highly intelligent, the pedigree of individuals, and not just in NSW and, in the Army and Air Force pipelines and Marine pipelines. It's pretty cool to see.
EOD certainly doesn't have any of those type A narcissists in ranks. That doesn't happen.
I will say to that note, the EOD techs that we had assigned to our platoon every rotation were always more squared away and typically more fit than the guys in the platoon. It was pretty neat.
I started in the Navy before jumping ship to the Army, and it was about 2007, and it was just before they turned like the SEALs turned EOD into a rate, so it was a special qualification, and they said we're not taking cooks, culinary specialists into the EOD program. So I went from Navy cook to Army EOD, and I have no complaints about the Army, but I still have that salt in my veins, and really would have loved to have done the all the water, the diving stuff. But it was definitely a culture shift.
Yeah.
Speaking of, we would mention your previous book. It's been about 5 years since that came out, and
yeah, gosh, almost. Yeah, it came out in December of 2020. So
yeah, and embrace the suck. How did you settle on the title? What does that mean? I know I lived it, but for those who don't know, is that like being happy wallowing in the crap, or does it have a different meaning?
The way that I built the thesis around that commonly used terminology in the military, obviously it comes from the military, so you've seen it across all branches. It's not a Navy SEAL saying. I think, frankly, probably the Marine Corps devised it first. Sounds like something Chesty Puller would come up with, but you hear that in the Army, you hear the Marine Corps all across all branches. But when working on this book, my first book was called Taking Point. It was more of a business book. So similar to, let me think, like McChrystal's Team of Teams, a lot of similar philosophies there on how we can apply some of our organizational structure and culture transformations from the military in that post 9/11 world of constant change, especially in the special operations community, to organizations going through transformation, driving growth, things like that. But in all of our work at Accelerate as a management consulting firm, originally, now we're a blend of professional services and enterprise software. But back then we were applying a lot of those principles and realizing that, of course, evolving as a leader in an organization requires a lot of identity transformation. It requires a lot of, individual resilience and grit, and leaning into not just being accepting of change, but, being a leader of change in an organization. So I identified an opportunity to write a book more in the genre of self-improvement, self-help, whatever terminology you want to pick. But it's an exciting genre because it's the largest genre of any type of content out there. So there's an opportunity to obviously have an impact on a much wider array of people than maybe a business book that's focused in a specific niche or category. And so I was inspired by a lot of the curriculum we'd been developing around leadership and personal development for organizations. And then when I started down that path, I realized I was never really a big consumer of self-improvement content at all. So the first thing I did was I went out and I, bought a bunch of the most popular books from Mark Manson's work, like Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, to Robin Sharma, to all these other authors out there who have done, and it's so different. All the content, the approach, the style, it's vastly different. And I mean, books that have all sold millions of copies, but they're completely different from one another. They're different in their approach, their tone, their content. So there was not a real single source of, identifiable information or an approach onto how to, take something like a concept of embrace the suck and build a book around it. So, I went with the themes and methodologies and principles that I learned in the SEAL teams that I know will work in business organizations as well. And then wrote the book. But really, ultimately, it's about, to your point, not just wallowing in, being good at wallowing in our misery, but being intentional in how we build resilience, build mental fortitude, how we intentionally put ourselves in uncomfortable situations with the intent of growth, whether it be personal growth, professional growth. These days, those things can and should be intimately intertwined. But also thinking about the concept of the fact that we all suffer from the human condition. So we all go through, these normal phases of grief, if you will, just as an example, of denial, then, acceptance and all the different stages and things like that. But the idea of continuing to build your resilience muscles and mental calluses is to devise routines and systems and a new way of thinking so that we move more quickly through that normal bunker of human emotion and grief into action-oriented thinking and execution. Just like, think about it as implying your own debriefing process. All right, something shitty happened. What am I going to learn from this? What are my takeaways? Anything relevant? I'm going to apply it. I'm going to put a system around it, and I'm going to move on. And not wallowing in it, but being, it does follow the get comfortable being uncomfortable methodology, because the more we intentionally expand the confines of our comfort zone, the broader that area becomes. And, challenges or obstacles or, things on our, career path roadmap that used to be seemingly impossible or stretch goals or impossible goals can gradually become part of our everyday execution. And then you move the goalpost back, you do it again, you do it again. This applies to our marriages and personal relationships. It applies to being a great parent. It applies to being a leader in an organization. It applies to the military. It applies to civilian life. And it's just a good, I think, mantra, because all of us go through varying degrees of adversity, as you well know, in our lives, some more than others. But whether it's, things that happen to us personally, or injuries on the battlefield, or divorce, or illness, or loss of loved ones, loss of brothers and sisters, in combat. We all go through these different things, just on, different scales, different magnitudes. But at some point, we've got to be able to lean into it, extract those lessons learned. And if you're a person of faith, obviously you can lean into that as well. So.
I think it was Goggins that really popularized the whole being comfortable comfort in being uncomfortable. And then he goes a step further and seeking out discomfort, right? Do something you hate, or do something that you do not want to do every single day.
Yeah.
But talking about these systems and processes and habits, and I think what you're saying is going beyond. It's kind of like vacillating from we all kind of are on. We shift from growth mindset to fixed mindset. We're never always in one camp. Like you say, we sometimes we're very proactive. Sometimes we kind of have a little bit of a victim mentality. It's the human condition. But how you set up, of course, in the book, in accepting the suck, you have these systems, processes to build the habits of being resilient. So it's going from being paralyzed by change to accepting change to actually leading change. And when you're the change leader, you're at your most resilient because you've already got the momentum. Even if there's some kind of a black swan thing that comes up, you're already moving, you're already changing, and you're already agile. So can you tell me, what are some of these processes? What are you setting the right goals, setting the right habits? How do you do that?
Yeah, one of the things that I really dug into in my new book, which is titled All In, The Pathway to Personal Growth and Professional Excellence. It comes out December 2nd, but I took one of the models that I shared in Embrace the Suck, which is the Remarkable Results Pyramid, and really dove a lot deeper into what do the layers of this pyramid look like from when an individual or a team or even an organization is going from their current state to their desired future state. So whatever time-bound nature you want to put to that sort of transformation, whether it's a goal for, a year or your 3 to 5 year vision for yourself, your marriage, your team, whatever it is. And it really starts with really better understanding the psychology behind why we choose the goals that we do. What are the real aspirations behind those goals? Are we investing our time in pursuing the right objectives that align with our values, that align with what we want to get out of this short life? And that's where I actually start, in the new book is showing the psychology and research and behavioral science behind, why we pursue certain things, but also how to do a quick analysis and making sure we're taking the appropriate tactical pauses to understand, am I spending my time on the right things that actually matter, that are actually truly fulfilling for me, for me or for my team? And are there some transformations that should happen here to ensure that I'm narrowing my focus and I'm only investing my God-given time, talent, and energy on stuff that truly matters to me, matters to others? What impact can I have? What can I do to give back and leave the world a better place, whatever the mission is, before you really go into what types of new routines and systems can I design to push myself further down that goal. And then I really dive into routines and habit building systems that will help you break bad habits. So eliminate things that are drawing you away from your goals. So one of the catalysts for writing this new book was my father passed away suddenly and unexpectedly almost 2 years ago in September of 2023. And I was on a business trip. I was in Dallas. We have a lot of clients there, but I'm in and out of Dallas all the time. So I hadn't mentioned to my parents I was going to be in because I wasn't going to have time to see them anyway. And we were ending this full day session with one of our longtime clients, and my phone had been vibrating like crazy in my pocket. And I figured it was some text chain from SEAL buddies or fraternity brothers from college or whatever it was. But it actually was my mom. My dad had taken a fall. He had a heart condition, but that's not what got him. It was the fall, and he hit his head. And because he was on blood thinners, it caused a brain bleed that was inoperable. And he passed away about 15 hours later. And it was one of those moments. We've all lost, loved ones. We've lost, brothers and sisters on the battlefield. But losing someone who's obviously pivotal in our lives, like a parent or a sibling or a child, is an eye-awakening moment that drives us to question our own mortality and makes us look at what we're currently accomplishing and what changes could we make in our own lives. Because it's, especially when we lose someone unexpectedly, it makes you question, like, wow, shit. I intellectually understand that our time is finite and that any day could be the day, but it's a big reminder. And so it was one of those things where I looked at my own life and like, what obstacles are getting in my way? I've achieved some success, but what else could I be doing to have a greater impact on other people, to improve my marriage, to improve my entrepreneurial path? And I looked at things that were the blockages too. Just like building any good mission plan, we look at what resources do we need and what threats and blockages are going to stand in our way of mission success on the battlefield. For me, one of those was alcohol, actually. And so, I had been, I'll just be honest, I've been abusing alcohol for some time. And, a lot of us do that, whether it's self-medicating for various different reasons, whether it's, from combat or from the stresses of being an entrepreneur and all those different things. And I realized it was a significant blocker in my life. So step one was I decided just to stop drinking completely, just right then and there. And so that was almost 2 years ago. And so that was one thing. And so the principles I wrote about in All In are intentionally designed because I've lived them intentionally. So every methodology that I put in the book, I have lived over the past 2 years while writing the book and now while it's in production before it comes out, of full transformation. So identifying bad habits and things that we waste our time and energy on, whether it's booze or wasting time sifting through social media or just other crap that just has no real meaning in our life. We waste an inordinate amount of time, and time is our most valuable commodity. We spend it freely without ever knowing the balance in our account, if you will. And so that's one thing that I looked at. How can I narrow my focus? How can I eliminate some bad habits? Even improve my health more, improve my marriage, improve my presence with my children, improve my business strategies. And that was one of the things among, some others. And then other than that was also refining my daily routine, starting with my morning routine. How do I prepare myself, for the battlefield mentally and physically every single day? So there's things that I dive into. And, I'm not the pioneer of these topics. You can look at James Clear's work or Robin Sharma's work or a lot of, very, very famous, well-known authors who've written incredible works that I've drawn inspiration from, and then putting my own twist on those things. But at the end of the day, these principles, they work. They work for transformation in your personal life, in your professional life. But as you well know, it's about applying discipline to the implementation of whatever systems you put in place so that you see follow through and you see longevity of those systems working, not just I'm going to do this for a few months and it just falls off. So
you definitely gave some excellent examples of leadership and resilience, in Embrace the Suck, the Shackleton's expedition to the South Pole, which if anybody hasn't read Endurance yet, that is one of the most, talking about an appropriately named ship, that is one of the most amazing feats of human survival and endurance and leadership, just holding those people together. That crew together. But no, there was something I had to chuckle a little bit at when you mentioned in part of the book was Jason Redman and his situation. And I've been on his show. He's been on this show, and we kind of joke about taking shots to the face and then running around the battlefield looking for our helmets. But a funny story. I don't think it was Dallas. By the way, you must be pretty close to the hub up there.
Oh yeah.
But I think we were going through Atlanta, and I was in the club, and funny. I have this. I told you this is Bluetooth connected, but it takes a second. If I'm playing on my phone, it's like the PowerPoint, send it back, bring the front with audio. So it kind of tunes out the ambient sound. It takes a couple seconds to switch it off. So somebody taps me on the arm in the lounge and I got to turn my thing off. By the time I can actually hear what's going on, all I hear is shot in the face, Navy SEAL. I'm like, Jason!
I love that guy. I love Jason.
So that was pretty funny. I know who that is.
Yeah. He's, and I asked him when I was writing that book, obviously I was, David Goggins and I went through Buds together, and we were at SEAL Team 5 together. And, that's one of the first people I thought of, obviously, about, someone who really exemplifies the intentionality of building mental fortitude. And then Jason was, one of the other top people that came to mind when it comes to somebody's story I really, really want to tell. And obviously he'd written about it in his books, and it's been obviously a commonly known story of resilience and recovery and leadership. And but I wanted to tell it, so I interviewed him for it, and I got to learn a lot more about the nuances of what really happened during that battle, but also just about his general journey. I mean, he's naturally, innately a very positive individual, but I mean, come on. I mean, Jason has his dark moments, his dark times, and, the internal battles that he's dealt with. And he and his wife have been on this journey together, which is fascinating too. They've written a new book together, and they're just phenomenal people. But to see someone like him immediately exhibit leadership when such a catastrophic event happened, I mean, that was the catalyst to why he wrote that poster that he hung on his door that now hangs in the, Walter Reed, facility, and really focusing on, look, if you're coming here with sorrow to feel sorry, for my wounds, go elsewhere. I got these wounds in a job I love, doing it for people I love, for a country I deeply love, and basically talking about how this is part of his personal journey and what can we all learn, from this type of setback. And I'm incredibly tough. I will make a full recovery. And like how he says, what is full? That is the utmost physically my body has the ability to recover. And then I will push that another 20% further through sheer mental tenacity. The room you're about to enter is a room of fun, optimism, and rapid regrowth. If you're not prepared for that, go elsewhere. I mean, that is, obviously I've memorized it because I'm so fascinated by the mindset that he adopted so quickly. Going back to what we talked about before, it's obviously like anyone else. He went through, significant, emotions when, this occurred to him, like anybody does. But he's one of these folks like you who's moved so quickly through that to turn it into something powerful that is not about himself, that is about other people. And it's just...
He went through a similar thing that I went through, not just with the physical injuries, but back when he was still active. And what I believe wholeheartedly is that the mental barriers, mental challenges are far more difficult to overcome than the physical. It's like ultras. Or marathons, when they say after 20 miles you're halfway there, but when he had to overcome his own mentality, that we mentioned, that kind of arrogance, that I've made it, I'm a Navy SEAL now and I'm an officer and now I can sit back. And that was one of his biggest hurdles. And the same thing happened to me. I became a sergeant, staff sergeant. Okay, I hit this rank. Now I'm a EOD team leader, or I'm earned my badge. I'm in the EOD fraternity. So I made it, and that's one of the biggest pitfalls for some is that they sit back and don't realize their potential because they have that "I've made it" mentality. But once you're over that, or at least, like we were talking about before, vacillating between the growth and the fixed. But if you're in the growth mindset, the physical challenge isn't nearly as difficult as that mental switch. So now you're utilizing these lessons learned, these experiences from the SEALs, your military career, and from business, and you're also employing AI to help other business leaders accelerate that transformation and become more resilient, become change makers. How do you integrate AI into this?
When we started on the path with our management consulting firm, the long-term vision was always to tech enable, these types of professional services, and eventually, transform into a full enterprise SaaS organization. But we started by doing this. One is to build a great practice, a management consulting practice that focuses on leadership and talent development, organizational transformation, culture transformation, typically a blend of all of those three categories into helping advance an existing mature organization or helping organizations that are in or desire to be in hyper growth mode, which obviously comes with a lot of significant change, both in change in resource needs, change in the culture, change in the skills, talent, and qualities of the people that they attract and want to retain. So one of the missing components, though, and that we were looking for is what types of technology do these large organizations use? What do they buy and what technology just sits there that gets unused and why? What tools do they use and actually like? What garners a lot of adoption, but what's also still missing from those tools? And, what is potentially a new category of software and technology? And then, of course, AI entered like a speeding freight train. And now we're all in the AI race, and every organization out there is pursuing AI adoption. Now it's how organized and strategic are you going to be in that AI adoption? Is it going to be all your employees just using Chat GPT, wildly just to try to make their work more efficient or the quality of their deliverables better? You get some of that, and sometimes that can work a little bit, but it's very disorganized and it doesn't have an immediate impact on the organization as it could when those AI and Gen AI tools and LLMs can be trained on the organization across all of its data, across all of its different existing platforms. So something can sit between or on top of your existing tools to help managers and teams make better decisions, to prioritize at scale, to apply even learning and development that will garner a much higher degree of action and implementation that will have a measurable impact on the business and desired outcomes. That's where we saw too on the learning and development piece or the performance management piece. Where are the tools that bridge the gap between learning development and performance management with business intelligence, with prioritization, with operational excellence? Those things all live in their own silos, still to this day. And so what we've built at Accelerate, and we still support it with highly integrated professional services, but what the platform does and the different products in the platform is bring performance, strategy, prioritization, and execution all into one platform. So whether the products in our platform are a system of record or through APIs we're connecting to other tools and platforms that they have, you want to be able to unleash the power of AI across all your business data, all your goals, all your priorities, even integrating performance. Why does that need to live in its own silo that gets unactioned and people just check the box? And that's why CEOs say, well, performance management and learning and development doesn't work. Well, it's because you're doing it wrong and you don't have the right tools to ensure that it's actioned. So that was the final step in understanding that no matter how good the curriculum, no matter how good the training, the facilitation, how deep the partnership is, if you lack the tools and the technology, which people are very used to using, then you have a much lower degree of implementation and therefore a much lower degree of impact on the business. And so the thesis there is to how do we change the narrative that that organizations can think about when it comes to optimizing performance and even scaling the organization's revenue without adding a bunch of additional headcount. Let's give people the tools they need to be more efficient, make better decisions, engage in deeper prioritization, not waste time on projects and activities that don't matter, communicate better cross-functionally, all the things that you need in any good organization. But let's put it into one app to help them do that so that they can, drive growth at scale, or just continue to be more efficient as a mature organization. That also helps, trickle down effect of employee engagement and retaining top talent and driving, better profitability through efficiency. So,
does this also include, say, leadership styles, personality types? Do you is this about personnel management, or is it mostly, say, like the performance data, KPIs, lead lag indicators, and how does it pertain to, say, the actual personalities and leaders within the organization?
The beauty is it does both. And so one of the things we uncovered too is, one, when it comes to usually some type of performance management outside of your traditional and usually crappy, poorly executed performance reviews and one-on-ones, are things like data collection. So surveys and survey management and what types of surveys are out there. We actually, in this example, we looked at all the existing surveys, from performance 360s to employee engagement surveys to pulse surveys, and they're all just wrong. They're antiquated. They ask the wrong questions. They ask too many questions. They're too long. Therefore, your number one data point is, well, how many people even filled out the survey? 50%. That's not good. There's your first data point on engagement and some of the cultural dynamics on, do people believe, is there a high degree of trust? Do they believe this is anonymous? Do they not? And so what we did is we revamped all of that. So we built all proprietary surveys, from what we call a performance and engagement survey, that is basically a shorter AI-powered version of a 360 that incorporates all the best elements of an employee engagement survey. And then the pulse survey products that we've developed are specifically designed to address the needs and data that managers need to have access to in a modern organization. So we've got team dynamics. We've got resilience and adaptability quotient. We've got a core values orientation quotient. We've got the AIQ, which is our version. It's the all-in quotient. Just a cooler version, cooler name than an employee engagement survey. So things like that are revamped, they're shorter, but most importantly in the platform, once the data is collected, it immediately drives AI-powered insights that are specific to the industry, the organization, the team, and the individual user's role in the organization. So managers and teams are getting very specific insights into what we're looking at this data. What does this data mean to the opportunities and blockages to our growth, to our prioritization? Where are we falling behind? Where are the gaps? So bringing all these insights together so you can actually use the data to drive growth in the organization or drive change or better efficiency. That's where the big gaps were. So it does, obviously help improve leadership competencies based on the different types of data that's being collected and all the learning and development tools that are embedded into the platform, from customized e-learning that's related to the competencies and where they need to improve, to other professional services that we supported outside of the software. But it's all fully integrated, because whether it's just an external partner running training and development or just a standalone software platform, one of the category defining things we found is that depending upon what you're trying to achieve, it cannot just be done with software alone. AI can't solve all of the issues in an organization. It's going to continue to drive massive amounts of efficiency. It's not replacing jobs. It's making jobs wildly more efficient so organizations can move faster. However, with certain things, depending upon what the organization's trying to accomplish, you really just cannot replace some degree of human interaction, human touch, and empowerment when it comes to coaching and mentorship or training and development. There are pieces there that we truly believe still need to be supported to some degree by human interaction.
Also, AI is such a powerful tool, and it's growing so fast. And actually, it helped me this morning make those really nice banana nut muffins with a big dome. Anyways,
love those things.
Yeah, but also integrating the AI with this data analysis and performance and all the other like third-party software tools. But how do you make that connection from the military service? I mean, did you create like a buds instructor agent with ChatGPT?
No, but that's a great idea.
You know what you need to do here is run into the surf, roll around in the sand, and turn yourself into a sugar cookie. Then come back to work, and you'll be fine.
One of the things we're doing is, as we grow, as we evolve, and as we, at each time we raise more capital, we're taking important elements of human interaction. When it makes sense, we're inputting an AI agent type of, technology into the platform for that piece. So we're continually streamlining the efficiencies and things that can be done very effectively through AI agents in, making this type of recommendation or that recommendation, or helping you analyze data, or helping you analyze documents. One of the most powerful and highly adopted products in the platform is our collaboration hub. One of the things you see across, whether it's military or civilian, cross-functional collaboration just sucks. People are in too many meetings. There's too many silos. There's a lack of sharing of information. There's zero documentation or action after the 8 meetings back-to-back that you just had all day long on Zoom. And people are spending all their time on Zoom meetings and not enough time in execution. And this has nothing to do with COVID. It's just now that people are used to, being in remote and hybrid environments. Most organizations that we work with have moved to hybrid or fully remote. Still to this day, a lot of organizations that have, pounded on, we're coming back to the office, that just hasn't been all that, it hasn't been all that successful. And they found it tough to attract talent now. These younger generations are like, I don't want to go to an office. And so that's a different podcast. We'll dig into that later. But, but one of the things we want to do is make sure that there's, an understanding. And I think that this is why we've been successful both in the services side, now in the software, that while, I am, like I said, a non-tech founder, our vision has been driven, our curriculum has been driven, our programs that now live in software have been built by, people who have, 30 years in the SEAL teams to 30 years in the Marine Corps, Top Gun fighter pilots and instructors. So there has been an influence, obviously, and people who also have an immense amount of business experience, consulting experience. They have the educational chops to go along with it. But when you have a different perspective on, that comes arguably from people who have been leaders in some of the most effective organizations in the world, then you're going to have a new and unique perspective, whether it's in programs or in technology, that's going to have a bigger impact on how people think about leadership and high performance teams in a modern business organization. It's just the facts.
Well, those that are willing to accept, this new integrations, have that growth mindset and kind of build these new systems and processes are going to be the most successful. And there are plenty of people and organizations out there that are very set in this works. So, it ain't broke, why change it? But there are a lot of tools out there that it's like my EOD experiences. It was at least the enemy, the limit to what the IED could be made out of is only limited by the bomb maker's creativity. So we had to be equally as creative. Be the hardest company out there to kill. So, I think that's a great great place to land the plane. But I wanted to ask you. We're going to roll into the final segment here, the countdown to impact. But first, I want to ask you, in your perspective, what is your idea of making an impact?
My idea of making an impact is thinking about, whether it's in my personal endeavors or my professional, life goals, objectives, things like that, is, wanting to consider, how is this going to have a lasting positive impact on the people that I interact with? Like, for example, even though we're an enterprise software company that Accelerate, our vision, so our aspirational reason for existing is to enhance the personal and professional lives and well-being of everyone we encounter. So that type of mindset, I know it sounds nice, but that is truly authentic, in our approach, and also my own personal values is, and this has evolved as I've aged and matured and become less selfish. It's something that's like, once I, leave this earth, and once I go over the Great Divide, and I'm in the halls of Valhalla, residing with, with friends and telling stories, what will I have left behind? What positive impact will I have had on my spouse, on my children, on other generations in the professional world? So thinking about authentically, what does service look like? What does, how can I narrow my focus to activities, personal pursuits, professional endeavors that will not just, drive growth, but also, have a personal impact on the people that I have the blessing of interacting with, in this short time we have here. So that's what it means to me.
I love it. All right. Now for the countdown. That's 3, 2, 1. 3 books, 2 quotes, and 1 person who have all made an impact in your life.
The hot seat. Okay. Let's see, 3 books. I will caveat this by saying I'm the kind of person who doesn't have a favorite movie or a favorite book. It depends on the topic, the genre, where I am in my life. I think top of mind, though, one book that has had a lot of influence on me is James Clear's Atomic Habits. I like his writing style, but also just the prescriptive nature of how we go about putting systems in place to break bad habits and to build better habits. It's basically a book that gives us mental hacks and emotional hacks on how to become unencumbered by the natural tendency to fall into bad habits and be intentional in how we design our environment and our life and our routines to have better outcomes. So that book is one. Another book that I originally didn't think I would really be sucked into or resonate with was Robin Sharma's 5 a.m. Club. I love his writing style. It's very that book in particular is it's telling a whole story, about this entrepreneur and this artist, and they meet at this this self-improvement conference, and they meet this billionaire, and they go on this crazy journey. But it's an incredible book that ultimately comes down to what our daily routines, and it's all about your morning routine, but also like what types of routines you design in your life, similar to what I was just talking about with Atomic Habits, that are intentional so that we spend our time on the right things that will develop our physical and mental health and wellness, that will help us professionally, help us build better relationships, and just eliminate the time-wasting shit from our lives that either has a negative impact on us or just no positive impact, whatsoever. And then the third book is just a genre of books. I'm obviously a big consumer of books written by our brothers and sisters, from the military, key lessons they've learned. A few of those, I love McChrystal's work. I love Jason Redman's work. I love, all my brothers from the SEAL teams and their books. But also, other books around, mental fortitude and endurance and things like that. One quote that I love, I know I shared this in Embrace the Suck, was actually by Bruce Lee. It's, do not pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. And I think it's a really, good mindset and methodology to live your life by. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering, does when you get the Trident, does it come with a book deal?
It didn't used to, but it does now. So in the early days of Buds, a lot of time you spend in the classroom is on authorship and screenplay writing. It's a whole thing, proper hair gel application, how to maintain a 6-pack, those, all this stuff. Yeah. Your hair looks phenomenal. So you've obviously gone through the training.
Yeah. We got to have the proper hair and the tan, sun's out, guns out, all that. Yeah.
Another quote I love, I'm a big consumer of quotes. I love these things, but one that just popped into my mind was Winston Churchill. He's got great stuff. But one is like, when you're in hell, just keep going. Meaning like when you're going through an arduous time, adversity, obstacles, at the end of the day, all we can do is lean into it and just keep moving forward. And that is, kind of like Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But no matter what, you got to keep moving forward. And it's the same philosophy. And I always answer the question. People always, ask like, what, if there's an individual that you've find an immense amount of inspiration. And my answer is always the same. I find immense inspiration in our brothers that didn't come home. The ones who made the ultimate sacrifice, many of whom who made that sacrifice willingly and intentionally to save the lives of their teammates. So those are the people that I find the most inspiration.
Awesome. I love it. And I appreciate all of those answers, and as well as your time here today, sharing your expertise, your experience. And
Thank you, brother.
If anybody wants to find out more about you, maybe find out more about your services and the business, where do they go?
The best, most centralized place, obviously, I'm on LinkedIn. You can look me up there. I'm on Instagram. But our company website is exlr8.ai. So accelerate just spelled a little differently. So it's exlr8.ai. And new book, All In, coming out. For those who can see this, coming out December 2nd. It's All In, the Pathway to Personal Growth and Professional Excellence. Excited about this book because I think, again, I'm very humbled to be able to even say this, but it has a lot of personal impact on people's lives, from saving marriages from divorce to helping people battle cancer to overcoming injuries and other types of obstacles. And I hope that this book has a similar, if not greater, impact on the readers. So I really appreciate you bringing me on, brother. And thank you for everything that you've done, for your service, for what you're doing to impact others now. And hope to do it again sometime in the future.
Well, then, folks, that's it for the show today. I appreciate it. And before you go, if you will, just open up a tab on your browser and put in that EXLR, the number 8.ai into your computer. Look up Brent on Instagram. Just open it up. You don't have to search for it right now, but just open it up. And then while you're at it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with somebody else. This show should get out to a broader audience. So that's the only cost for the episode today, is a little bit of love coming back our way. Anyways, until next time, make an impact.